Hello, this is Major Dave coming to you once again with a special message for the members of the North Carolina General Assembly. Last week I made a Zoom presentation online for the Coastal Carolina Taxpayers Association about the serious issues that exist with the integrity of election data in North Carolina. NC House Representative Keith Kidwell happened to join in and watch what I had to say. And following that presentation, he asked me to put together a short synopsis of my findings that he could share with his colleagues. Now, I agreed in hopes that the legislature will gain an increased sense of urgency during the current short session to address the many flaws I've found that exist in the software for processing our election data and computing the election results. Now, this is a very brief summary of only a few of the hundreds of discrepancies documented in the records. And this truly is just the tip of the iceberg, but enough, I hope, to make the point. So let's begin with the general election of 2016, where, if you can believe it, the results showed 3 candidates actually received a negative number of votes. And I asked, what ballot can you cast that generates a negative vote? And of course there is none. Yet no flags were raised, and apparently no one in Raleigh was even aware that it happened until September 17, when I met with the executive director of the State Board of Elections and her 5 top deputies in their office in Raleigh. Now, at that meeting, I also pointed out over 500 missing lines of over and under vote totals from that same results report. And their response? Well, it wasn't to investigate to determine why these and other lines were not included in the report. Rather than even offer a guess as to why, Ms. Strack simply turned to her staff at that moment and directed them not to report the under and over vote totals in future results reports made public. And true to that directive, they have not appeared in any subsequent election results data file. Yet this was the only way that we could ever reconcile the total number of votes with the total number of ballots cast. Now, if the state can alter the tabulation and reporting software at will like that without disturbing FEC certification of the system, then I suggest that certification becomes relatively meaningless. A review of the public data files on their website also shows that the state board continues to fail to comply with state law that requires them within 30 days of an election to make public an amended results file that shows all votes according to the precinct where the voter was registered that were initially reported only by the voting method, such as absentee by mail, provisional, or one-stop. Now, of the 13 elections held in North Carolina since November of 2016, when this was last done, only one elections data set contains this amended report, and that's for the November 2018 general election. Now, as this slide shows, archived election data files for past elections continued to be modified long after the results are certified as final. On a single day in May of 2017, someone modified the files for nearly 24 past election data files. As the date and time of the changes tends to indicate, the very brief time lapse between file changes strongly suggests someone wrote an automated program to open and alter these files in rapid succession. So I ask, why aren't archived election data files protected from subsequent alteration? Clearly it's happening, and there's simply no obviously good reason for it. Now, while I'm still not fully done with analyzing all the provisional ballot data from 2018, I've already identified 123 provisional ballot records that simply disappeared from the record prior to canvass day. And that's based on my review of only 78 of the 100 counties. So certainly there are probably more. Well, did they vote or didn't they? Were they counted or not? Well, we don't know because they're just gone from the record. As this slide shows, one ballot from Mecklenburg County actually appeared in the record for 2 days, November 8th and 9th, then disappeared for 5 days, and then reappeared on the 15th, just before the canvass. The record for that election also shows, as you can see here, someone casting their vote as far back as 1994 and as far into the future as the year 9998. Now, even if we conclude these are all mere clerical errors, and likely are, it is such a simple software fix to limit the date voted to the range of eligible dates within which ballots could be legally cast and prevent this kind of operator error in data entry. Our counties collectively pay millions of dollars annually for software and firmware maintenance on our system, and yet we find better data controls on a $2 purchase on eBay or Amazon. And it's ridiculous. You should also know that the results file for the 2018 general election has not changed since the evening of November 16th, which was Canvass Day. Yet 11 counties still had not made their final upload to the state. And that's according to the companion county status report, which tracks and documents these submissions by the counties. Yet when they were complete on the 27th after the Thanksgiving holiday break, the results still did not change by one vote for any candidate anywhere in the state. And as this slide shows, that's over 7,000 potential votes not finalized until after the canvass, and yet the record says they collectively had zero impact on the outcome. In fact, after the Thanksgiving holidays and into the first week of December, there were actual ballot statuses that were changed, some from approved to not counted, and vice versa. Hundreds of other records saw their data elements changed as well, such as the precinct where the voter was registered. And continuing to use 2018 as an example, as this timeline summary shows, as of Election Day, and this should be very important to each of you since you're an elected official, there were only 1,276 provisional ballots known to have been cast in that election. Races were called and conceded on that basis. Yet over the next 10 days until the canvass, that number exploded to 35,776. What that means is there were over 33,000 ballots in play that no one even knew existed and would not know existed until days later when the counties finally added them into their reports. And yet races were being called and conceded, not knowing that all these ballots were still outstanding. And to make matters worse, to this day, there are still 3,320 provisional ballots reported as cast in that election that still show their status as pending. So final and official don't seem to be either if things are still pending. Yet there we are. And this is typical from one election to the next. Something has to change. But even more recently, though, in the March primary of this year, as you can see here, by 8 p.m. on election night, votes were already being reported, as shown here in the right-hand column, as having come from provisional ballots, when for the most part they'd not yet even been reported as cast, much less vetted and approved. Now, I captured these images, among others, from the State Board's website that evening as results began coming in. I illustrate this with samples for the Democratic presidential primary and both the Republican governor and lieutenant governor's races. And not surprisingly, those numbers all disappeared the following day. But it begs the question of just how dependable our system is for getting the right numbers in the right places and how easily they can be moved around, altered, or removed. Now lastly, as this slide shows, there remains a substantial difference between the reported number of ballots cast on the official results pages for the March primary and the number documented in the voter history file, which breaks down the participating voting populace by demographic criteria. Now, I hope you will conclude that for whatever the reason, this is simply unacceptable. They are off by over 182,000 voters, accounting for all of the votes that they say were cast. Now, as you all navigate the COVID-19 drama and the push by some for all by-mail voting in November, I strongly urge you not to let that become the only election issue undertaken during the short session. We need some serious external review of our election data processing and accounting system and the security provided for that data to prevent future alterations of the public record to ensure the accuracy we all deserve. Now, I remain available to come to Raleigh to brief any committee or body of members with additional details and specificity that justify the need for significant election reform in North Carolina. I thank you for your time, and I trust you will all step up and do the right thing.